So welcome everyone to our March webinar, a collaboration presentation of the Federation for Children with Special Needs and the Recruitment Training and Support Center, or RTSC. I am Mary Beth Landy, the Senior Trainer and Support Specialist at RTSC. Today, our webinar is Paving the Way, Transition Planning to Help Youth Age Out of Care. And our presentation is being offered by Krishna Richardson-Daniels, Director of STEM with Technology Access Foundation and the founding director of A Bridge Forward. Krishna is an accomplished public health and education professional, born and raised in Seattle. And she earned her bachelor's degree from Dillard University and her master's of public health from University of Pretoria, and correct me if I'm wrong in that, in South Africa. She has served in the Peace Corps as a volunteer in Niger, West Africa, and worked in parts of Sub-Saharan, sorry, I'm just having stuttering problems today, in Africa, as well as a professional public health professional. With over 20 years of progressive experience in spearheading programs, operations with nonprofit, government organizations, both locally and globally, and educational institutions, Krishna is passionate about serving African Americans and other people of color from disadvantaged communities. She has the desire to see systemic and institutional racism dismantled and longs for the implementation of racial equity and social and educational justice. So welcome, Krishna. Thank you for joining us today. And what we will do is be taking questions at the end, but I would ask that you pose your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And I will moderate those questions when we come to that point. So if you have other technical issues or anything, please put those in the chat. Past webinars are archived on the RTSC website, along with many resources on trauma, learning, educational issues that impact students in child welfare. So welcome, Krishna, and it is all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary Beth. It is an honor to be here today. I appreciate you all for creating the space and time. I would like to do a land acknowledgement first and foremost, which we stand today. I honor all of the indigenous nations and their land with great gratitude and acknowledge the genocide and continuous displacement of indigenous peoples. I acknowledge the home of the Coast people, the home of all the tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations within Washington state. I also acknowledge my ancestors, the enslaved Africans who built many of our towns and cities during the colonial era and beyond. I acknowledge the harm inflicted upon the indigenous communities and people of color across the country, which has inspired my work today. So good morning, good afternoon, and everyone, thank you so much for participating in this webinar today. As Mary Beth mentioned, my name is Krishna Richardson-Daniels. I am the founder and director of A Bridge Forward. As an advocate, a former foster parent, and founding director of A Bridge Forward, I began this work 10 years ago after learning that 60% of our youth in foster care were African American, Latinx, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, American Indian, and Alaska Native children. Studies continue to show the racial disproportionalities and disparities that exist in child welfare. I also noticed similar racial disproportionalities when it came to serving as a foster parent. I was one of the only single Black women licensed as a foster parent and one of the only individuals interested in reunifying the youth with their bio parents. Many of my white counterparts were interested in adopting the kids, but I was focused on creating a safe, stable, temporary shelter for our youth until they were able to be reunified with their parents, in hopes that their parents were well equipped to take them back. As my kids began to age out of the system, many of them would call to ask for help. For instance, they had questions about how to obtain their GED, going to college, navigating the affordable housing system, inquiring about job opportunities, and more. I noticed how daunting this experience was for them, trying to identify a trusted support system that really had their best interests at heart. Feeling inadequate and not confident in their ability to navigate the world as an adult at age 18, I decided after several years working with the Child Welfare and Children's Administration, I would hang up my license and choose a different trajectory to serve my youth. And that's when A Bridge Forward was realized. I became the voice for those who did not have a voice. I worked with the lawyers to discuss the legal implications that legal financial obligations played on our youth. I met with social workers to discuss what support services exist for youth who age out at 18. I connected with King County Housing Authority to learn about Section 8 housing vouchers. I learned about the scholarship opportunities such as College Success Foundation and the Passport to College Success and Scholarships. And of course, today, A Bridge Forward works with young adults to engage, guide, and empower former foster youth on their path to become self-sufficient through connections to community-enriched educational services, mentorship, advocacy, and to build long-lasting relationships with a community of people. Every year, over 600 Washington State youth age out of foster care. They leave the protections of the Department of Social and Health Services and the families and homes that they have lived in, regardless of their readiness to negotiate the transition. Many become homeless. Statistically, they are more likely to commit crimes and be arrested or jailed and less likely to attend college. Many of these aged out foster youth run short on rent and utility bills and depend on food stamps or other government support. In Washington, these statistics have changed, but have not drastically been different from the demographic profile you see here. With over half of our foster youth being female at 52%, 80% of our youth are 18 and age out of the system. Although there are resources like the extended care system, our youth are ready to cut ties with child welfare. In addition, you will see that over half of our foster youth are minority status. So what does aging out really mean? What does aging out of foster care mean? 13 years ago, the United States Congress passed the Fostering Connections Act, a law that promotes permanent families for children and youth in foster care. This would help youth who turn 18 to remain in care until they're 19, 20, or 21, with continued federal support to increase their opportunity for success as they transition to adulthood. Youth could receive care until they're 21 years of age or at their 21st birthday if they enroll in post-secondary education or enroll in a program to remove barriers to employment. You'll notice here for the state of Washington, legislatures had actually approved the Foster Care Act for 21 for youth and post-secondary education. And you'll notice throughout the years, there were amendments made. And as you see here in 2018, youth are able to re-enroll into extended foster care with an unlimited number of times. Excuse me. In addition to enrolling in a program to remove barriers to employment, such as a pre-apprenticeship training program, youth could also be employed at least 80 hours per month and or due to medical conditions, unable to participate in post-secondary education or employment. But what about those youth who are turning 21 and have yet to graduate from college? Or individuals who are trying to get into affordable housing and can't because they are in college and do not fit the criteria? Or what about those 21-year-olds or 22-year-olds who are working full-time and trying to make ends meet, but the cost of living is so high and their Section 8 housing vouchers will only cover so much? What happens then? I'd like to take a moment for you all to just review this snippet. It's a video that really gives you a snapshot of, youth and young adults who are aging out of the system. Michael and Corey are both here in Washington State, and they are focused in on what happens when they age out at 21 years of age. So I'll go ahead and play this video. Mary Beth, please let me know if you can hear the sound. Okay, thank you.
2 years ago, when I was 19, I was like getting ready to get in school, and I had 2 jobs, and everything was good. And then I heard word that my mom had died, and it felt like my life took a pause at that point.
Her mom loved her unquestionably, and her mom knew that she wasn't able to take care of her. And the stress from a lot of that created the stroke that her mom had. Mikhail didn't have that information because nobody gave her the information. All the stuff she had heard, it was negative.
I guess I never acknowledged the fact that I had this mom that was never around, that didn't really exist, but was real. Every sorry that I would never hear, every explanation, there were no explanations that were ever going to come. Like, it just put everything at a stop. Like, it's never going to happen. You know what I mean? The story is like real, and you're never going to hear a sorry, and you're never going to get to live with your mom, and you're never going to be able to have children, and like, she'll be clean, and you'll have like this story. That will never happen.
How me and my mom finally reconnected. I believe I was 16 or 17. She sent me a friend request on Facebook, sent me a huge message, and was like, I finally found you. And I remember I sent a message like, who are you? She replied back, and she was like, I'm scared to tell you who I am. And I was kind of just sitting there like creeped out, and that's when she was like, you know, I'm your mom, and all these emotions inside, you know, I just didn't know what to do. 17 years of not having parents or not knowing if I have any parents, and then all of a sudden they just show up out of nowhere, and it's just, that's hard. Like, you have like anger because you know that shouldn't have happened, and then you also have forgiveness, and you're happy because you know who brought you into this world. It's still hard. We're still trying to build and bond.
Today is my 21st birthday, and I am very happy to be 21. So all these supports that I've had today on my birthday, I lose them at like 12 tonight, you know? And being that there are people that I interact, because they're like a really big part of my, well, they are my support system, because I don't have like parents, of course, and then, well, I do have parents, but I don't have parents that support me, and then I don't have a lot of family that supports me, and so I'm so used to having them support me, like Brian and Joanne and Rosie and Parisa, and so they just go away, and like they're no longer supports anymore. So that's kind of the sad part about it. I guess I'm kind of sad about that. This is the beginning of a new journey, of a new story. This is like where my life begins as an individual. Pretty scary, really scary. But you know me, I'm gonna do it for sure.
mac and cheese, like the best part. It's all good. I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness! Hi!
How are you? I snuck in.
Oh, I
Nice
finally get to meet you.
Yeah, I've heard so much about you.
I've heard a lot about you as well. Wow,
So,
you're a great guy from what I hear.
So grateful for what you've done for this segment.
You know, Corey, he's good. He's a good guy. He really is.
Turning 21 and graduating out of foster care is always going to be scary. I feel like it's just another birthday, but at the same time, every foster kid's dream is to not be with the state. It's kind of a reward for no social worker, not having to worry about dependency hearings and the licensors and getting worried about where you're going to be getting placed next.
That's Judy.
Yeah, Mom
That's
said
Judy.
it. Oh, cool.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Corey. Happy birthday to you.
Hi, winner.
Hold his hand.
There you go.
So just looking at the footage that I've shared, what are some of Michael and Corey's concerns? What were some of the barriers that they were experiencing or had experienced while in the foster care system right up until they were aging out? And what could have helped Corey and Michael during this time as they were aging out of the system? Things to reflect on, things to think about. And I'll just play the second half of this video so you can actually see the outcome for them.
What's new in my life? Well, I'm stressed out. That's new. I'm really stressed out and overwhelmed. What's cool? I've been feeling that way for a while. Anywho, I quit my job because they just weren't really respecting my school hours. So I kind of had to call it quits because, like I said initially, school is really my priority over all things. So, I mean, I've been looking for apartments, haven't found anything, but being that I have a lot more time now that I don't have a job, it should be a lot easier to find an apartment. Like, it can go back on the list of priorities, like main priorities.
Okay, if extension is granted, what additional steps will you take to find housing? What would you do differently? I would say that you would like to work closely with your SHA counselor to find places that will rent to you. The issue we have is we've gone to several places, and the minute they find out that he has a small ding on his criminal background, they're done. Everywhere we've gone, it's just been, nope, we won't deal with you, we won't, and a lot of places saying they won't even work with the Section 8. He also has a boatload of people willing to write letters of recommendation to his character and his responsibility and things like that. The apartments we went to said they didn't care. Yeah.
Sometimes the screening is completely automated. They don't have any say. It really depends on.
2013, I got a felony harassment. It knocked me off track for a little bit, but it gave me more motivation, and I realized that, everything's going to be harder. Having a felony is a huge barrier for me to try to get an apartment.
That's not Maybe it's down here.
But she said turn right here.
Ask them if they have any availability, and if they do, tell them we're outside. Do you know when there might be some turnover or when we might check back?
You can always check back. You can check back anytime. We'll know what we'll have available at the end of the month on the 10th or 11th.
Okay. So the 10th, that's the ideal time to call in. Okay. So we just missed it. All first come, first serve. She says to leave a message for him.
I was just calling because I was interested in the apartment. So give me a call back, that'd be greatly appreciated. All right, thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
So we see the benefits of extended foster care. Many are likely to be employed, homelessness is reduced, healthcare and medical departments are more likely to see our young adults for checkups, substance abuse, treatment, and criminal convictions are reduced, and more. Many of our young adults need support beyond the 21 years and are less likely to have support needed to overcome these barriers to post-secondary education, housing, and employment. During some of our workshops, we talk about managing complex change from a personal and professional standpoint. I've noticed here, if you look at the different elements of vision, skills, incentives, resources, and action plan, this is really adapted from the Lippitt-Noster model. And within these 5 elements required for effective positive change, we realize that you have to have a clear vision, right? Acquiring skills, incentives, resources, and an action plan in order to create this positive change. Not only do we emphasize the importance of each of these elements, but we ensure our youth and young adults understand the why. Why is the change needed? For instance, some of our youth ask, why should we use a ledger for expenses? And this helps, our individuals manage their money to keep track of what is being spent. Skills are also just as necessary. We found that many of our young adults did not have the savvy computer literacy skills needed to surf the web for job opportunities or to navigate the housing market for rentals or calling organizations and knowing the right questions to ask. We think of the incentives and the perks that go along with that and how it will benefit them. But we never want to waste time talking about things that are not, or that are irrelevant to our young adults. Sometimes those incentives may be a gift card, a free meal for participating. As you know, incentives can be tangible, such as monetary, or intangible, such as personal achievements or prestige. With the resources, we realize that it's important for change efforts, right? They can be physical or emotional. For instance, thinking about how our young adults will be transported to certain activities or workshops. Consider hosting an event where former foster youth talk about their experience that may spark our youth's interest. Identifying relevant storytellers that could share their experience and become an inspiration. And lastly, establishing an action plan. The action plan should have clear direction. Without a plan, gaining traction and moving forward is pretty much impossible. So you'll see here, you have the 5 elements: the vision, skills, incentives, resources, and action plan. But if any of these elements are missing, it really will result in your change efforts failing. So for instance, without a vision, our youth are left feeling confused and do not understand the why or the overarching goal or objectives. Without the skills, our youth are uncertain about what they should do with the information they've received. Without the incentives, our youth are resistant to show up. But as I mentioned, if any of these other elements are missing, it could lead to frustration and or a false start. So we focused in on really, how do we empower our youth? What can we do to really focus in on empowering our youth? Youth empowerment is a process where young adults are encouraged to take charge of their lives. They do this by addressing their situation and then taking action in order to improve their access to resources and transform consciousness through their beliefs, values, and attitudes. This 4-stage process has led to positive change for our young adults. The first stage requires building authentic, trusted relationships with our youth. Many of our youth have been told where to go, what to do, how to respond, but very rarely are individuals building long-term, authentic relationships. As you heard Corey earlier state in the video, for many years, they're told where to go. They have these meetings with their social workers, their dependency lawyers, their educational liaisons, but it's never an opportunity where these individuals are trying to create long-lasting relationships. And so that's part of what we at A Bridge Forward are doing, is really trying to build trusting relationships, because there have been so many broken promises or individuals coming in and out of their lives. Excuse me. In addition, it's imperative to create pathways to opportunity. For instance, some of our youth were not interested in going to a 4-year college or university. So we discussed the option of trade school and what benefits this could offer. A number of our youth were intrigued by the pre-apprenticeship construction training program that organizations had to offer, which led to a pathway of opportunities. The second stage offers life skills curriculum, where topics such as taxes, credit, financial literacy, budgeting, a vision board, which is kind of like art therapy for them, health and happiness, college and career readiness are discussed in great detail. In addition, we realize the importance of connecting our youth to companies and agencies that have opportunities, such as paid internships, summer programs, job opportunities, and more. Within this third stage, this is incentives and implementation of the partnerships, right, being realized, where our youth make connections with local and national corporations. They begin to see the benefits, their interests and passions come to fruition. There's really a beacon of light, a hope, a place where they can shine. In addition, there is an opportunity to focus on self-sufficiency. So the self-sufficiency roadmap is really taking charge of their health and well-being, identifying support systems when needed, learning the basics of cooking, understanding the purpose of healing and forgiveness, and getting to know oneself, really a self-discovery. And the last and final stage is the positive change. Youth complete the program and or graduate from programs or with companies. These lead to lasting, trustworthy relationships with our youth. They feel empowered, confident in their ability to create change for the better. They're less anxious about aging out of care and are guided on this career path where the possibilities are endless. So as we think about those 4 stages, we also focus in and realize the impact that this has on our youth. Taking these steps allows for authentic relationships to be built, young adult development, educational goals and performance achieved. This also creates healthy, positive change and allows our youth to not only feel empowered, but worthy of achieving greatness. Our youth are resilient, and most importantly, they are able to successfully establish a career path that best fits their aspirations and interest. So here is really just a snapshot and a sample list of some of the local and national organizations and corporations that currently participate and provide our youth with a multitude of opportunities and career paths to choose from. If you notice, Amazon, Bank of America, Boeing, Costco, Google, Kaiser, PACCAR, Microsoft, Weyerhaeuser, all of them have a youth and or young adult program, and some of them focus specifically on our young adults who age out of the foster care system. So I highly encourage you to seek them out if you are interested in corporate partnerships. I definitely know that they would be interested, and it's not just locally, right? These are global corporations that work around the world. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. In addition to a bridge forward, here's a list of other local organizations and agencies that are paving the way for our youth and young adults that transition out of the foster care system to a successful career path, positive change, and adulthood. And I've listed just a few publications for you all. Some of these are really just data sources that allowed me to share information about our statistics and about the number of individuals who are aging out of our system here in Washington State and around the country. And that is my presentation for the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering, Krishna, if you could speak to a little bit about the self-sufficiency roadmap. What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's actually a diagram and it looks like a little roadmap, right? And so there's different blocks where we focus in on, as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of activities that we do, but we really try to take a chunk of at least a week or two at a time to where we focus in on healing and forgiveness. We focus in on art therapy and vision boards. And these are all different elements to becoming more self-sufficient and being able to transition to adulthood a little better. As you may or may not know, most of our young adults meet with their social worker at age 17 and a half, which is 6 months before they age out of the system. I say to myself, you know, if my mother had had a conversation with me at 17 and a half to say, all right, Krishna, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? All right, so you've got these options. You can do this, you can do that, you can do this. All right, so good luck with that. And we'll see you in the next life. And unfortunately, that is some of the conversations that our youth or young adults are feeling when they're meeting with their social workers as they prepare for transitioning out of the system, which is why we're grateful that the Extended Foster Care or Fostering Connections Act had been realized. But we also noticed that even at 21, our young adults are not ready. They are still discovering who they are. They're still dealing with some of the pain and the hurt and the loss. They're still on this path of just forgiveness. But meanwhile, they're also trying to identify their support system, right? Because everything that they knew, whether they were living with a foster parent and or with a family member, pretty much comes to a halt as they age out of the system. And that can be very daunting, but also it adds a lot of pressure and it causes our young adults to become very overwhelmed with having to think of all of the steps, all of the pieces to the puzzle of just being an adult, right? So thinking about a housing voucher, who thinks about, you know, if this will cover you, you know you have this voucher, but cost of living in Seattle is so high that none of our young adults really have the opportunity to live in Seattle. They have to live outside of the city. And really navigating that housing market is just tumultuous at some point with our young adults. So really the roadmap is just giving them clear steps and understanding what are the key elements that you really need to focus in on to prioritize aging out of this system. What are some of the steps that you really should take to think about how to be self-sufficient? What does self-sufficiency really mean, right? That doesn't mean that you have to eliminate a support system, but that really means identifying those people who you know are your support system, right? And granted, yes, they have social workers who sometimes in their relationship with the young adults after they age out, but there are others that are saying, hey, I will see you through this. Until you are successfully doing the work, I want to see you through this. But it's very rare. And so that's part of the reason why we felt as though it's necessary to really talk about all the elements that come into play when it comes to transitioning to adulthood. And that's where the self-sufficiency roadmap comes into play.
That's great. So in Massachusetts, at the age of 16, the students are allowed to acquire an adolescent worker. And it sounds as if their role is a little bit similar to what you're looking at.
Yes.
And then if they choose to, they would age out at 18 unless they choose to sign themselves back in to DCF custody. And at that point, the case worker, social worker would stop, and they would work with the adolescent worker to continue. And they can do that up until the age of 21. And then they age out. So that's what Massachusetts somewhat looks like. But part of it is getting the students to buy in. And we speak about this with our surrogate parents that work with the students, trying to get them to buy into the fact. Understandably, nobody wants to have Big Brother staring over them, telling them what to do and when to brush their teeth. But there's also the benefit of being able to acquire funding for post-secondary education or vocational education, to be able to have stabilized housing for at least up until that period of time. And if they're looking at a school that offers housing that may be dorm housing and maybe pre-independent living, it may be apartment housing,
right?
You know, the very, very different aspects. But that's a challenge. Is there suggestions that you might have for some of our surrogate parents on how to be able to help negotiate that with students and show them the benefits that they can have to even buy themselves a little bit more time to establish themselves before aging out?
To be honest with you, starting the conversation early. You know, I think that is one of the first benefits is, let's not wait until our youth or young adults are at 17 and a half to begin the conversation about what are we going to do when you're 18 or when you turn 21. But also, what are the resources that exist now within our proximity, within our area, within our region? And so I know that there are nonprofits that are within each of your states that offer similar support services and guidance, right? In addition to national services. So for instance, you have KC Family Programs that is readily available that can identify and locate organizations in your hometown that would be able to offer additional support. I will say that for Bridge Forward, we've had conversations about going into middle schools to really begin working with, and even high school, but really working with our 8th graders and then the 9th through 12th graders to really think about, okay, not only are we thinking about the life skills, but really self-sufficiency roadmap should be for all of our youth and young adults, right? So, you know, it would really help guide them and to allow them to see that adulthood does not have to be so challenging. It does not have to be this, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm burdened by the thought of becoming an adult, but really having or mapping it out to say, okay, well, I know that when I turn 18, I really want to go to this trade school. When I get into this trade school, I have to think about, is this going to be free or am I going to have to pay for it? Well, it's going to be free. So great. So I don't have to pay for my education, but I will have to pay for housing. If I think about housing, am I going to have to get this housing voucher, this Section 8 voucher? Okay, is this Section 8 voucher going to end when I turn 21? if it does, then what are the resources can I look at? Do I need to get a part-time job in the meantime? You know, with regards to transportation, I have this pass that I've gotten from, you know, a Bridge Forward or from another agency, but when I turn 21, it's going to end. So how do I look at some of the resources to offer bus passes and or this transportation for individuals where they do not have an income, right? Because the YMCA offers such, the YWCA offers such, you know, so just really working with our youth and sitting that down to actually create this roadmap, as well as mapping out what it's going to look like for each individual. And that takes time. And every individual has a different trajectory and or passion.
Mm-hmm. I think that relational aspects are really seem to be the cusp of all of this.
Definitely. Because, you know, our young adults have seen so many folks come in and out of their lives, right? As I remember having one of my kids had been in 11 homes and they were 12. And so just to think about having to not only transition and kind of think about the individuals' homes that they were in, but really feeling this level of comfort. It's hard to feel comfortable. It's hard to trust because you don't know when you're going to have to pick up and go somewhere else. And I think for me and even for our young adults, like I said, the first thing that we try to do is build authentic, trusting relationships. Because once you've gained the trust, then they're willing to work with you. They're willing to take the steps. And they see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, which means that they see that you have their best interests at heart. And you're not going to one day say, all right, well, I'm done. My program's over. Or, you know, we're not getting paid for this any longer, so we can't help you. That has been the hardest part, is just really creating those authentic relationships and allowing them to trust us as we trust them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mentorship was a question that I also had. Do you have does your agency have a relationship with mentorships, or what does that look like in Washington or Seattle? Because I think that sometimes can help with that relational issue.
Yeah, so, you know, initially we had looked at different corporations and organizations to kind of be those mentors. And we were like, you know, they're so high level and they're thinking about employment opportunities. So let's scale back and let's work with our community members and find out who is interested. And we found that a number of our community partners were saying, you know, I'd be interested in, you know, taking our youth or young adults out for the weekend. I'll check in with them. I will actually create a care package for them. I'm happy to create these food boxes and gift cards every month for these young adults. I would come to these workshops and do a cooking class for you all. And so we kind of look at it as an auntie uncle kind of a partnership and mentorship. We have worked with some organizations, but we find that our community partners do a phenomenal job of just building those relationships and just being that mentor. We also notice that with regards to the community partners, as much as we thought about, hey, would you like to be a foster parent? They were like, you know, I just don't have the time or the means for such, but I do have my weekends free. I do have an opportunity to go into my pocket and pay or offer you money for gift cards, or for, you know, some of your females who are in need of sanitary napkins, or, you know, there were a number of gift giving opportunities. And we found that our community members were stellar in just being those mentors for our youth and young adults.
I think that's really amazing. I
Yeah.
do want to remind people that any questions they have, they can either place in the Q&A at the bottom of their screen, or in the chat is fine as well. Let's keep the conversation going. I think that it's fascinating what you've been able to build and develop and cultivate. I think cultivate's really the word, the relationships between the community and the youth that are becoming part of that community.
Yeah, and I think, Mary Beth, that is the piece, is I look at these youth because they are going to be the ones taking care of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if we're not giving to them, and if we're not guiding them, and if we're not directing them, then what good will they be for us when we are old and gray and looking to them to lead the charge and lead the way? So it's really my due diligence to be able to give back what I know someone gave to me, and allow and hope that these youth and young adults do the same for me when I am old or older. I say I'm 25 for life, but realistically, that's it's not the case.
I definitely get that. Yeah, I have 2 children adopted through DCF, Department of Children and Family here. And one of the things that I think that they benefited from were the community auntie and uncles that, that they had and continue to have in their lives and carry on. And they are providing that for other people as well, for younger kids as well, knowing that it's a created relationship. Definitely. That it's not always your biological family or your adopted family. It is the family that you create.
That's it. That's it.
That's so important for our kids. And I know a lot of our surrogate parents who work with the kids in the special education aspect of it will even stay with the kids as advisors. They call themselves officially advisors. I call them aunties and uncles. Yeah. That stay on with the kids after they're 18 and will help them, navigate the world as they go through post-secondary education or vocational education. To have those, because even in the video you were showing, Joe, who had been his foster dad at some point, was really pitching in and picking up the pieces for him and giving him holding a space for him to be able to work through the things he had to work through.
Yeah. And I guarantee that Corey and Joe still have a relationship to this day.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. As we always say, it takes a village to raise our children. No one says what the village looks like. It's really just a matter of individuals from all walks of life coming in to see that there is a need and being able to support our individuals, our youth and young adults with some of the challenges they're facing, but also seeing how they can best support and guide our youth to be successful in whatever they envision for their lives.
Exactly. Could you just speak a little bit to the Casey Life Skills Assessment that you had mentioned?
Casey Family Programs?
Yes.
So Casey Family Programs, and the reason why I talk about Casey Family Programs is because as a licensed foster parent or former licensed foster parent, I went through a private organization, which was Casey Family Programs. You have different ways to obtain your license, either through the state and or through a private agency. And so Casey Family Programs is where I decided to get licensed. And they offer, keep in mind here in Washington State, they only work with 12 to 18 years of age. So all of my kids were high school and or young adults. And so for them, they actually offered life skills classes for our youth and or partner with organizations. And so during that time, they asked me to come in and meet with our foster care parents, as well as some of our youth and young adults, to talk about that experience for some of my youth, because I had different conversations with my children as they were transitioning out. And so Casey didn't adopt our program and or the life skills curriculum that we offered, but they also have a curriculum that they provide to their youth who are in their programs.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely will say that, you know, there are a number of local organizations here that are doing great work when it comes to life skills training and curriculum, but it's not well advertised or marketed. And so it's really important to even consider some of the national organizations like KC Family Programs, like Family Friends, who may have additional life skills curriculum that is available to them as well.
Great, and thank you. I know those are in the resources. We will be sending out a PDF of the PowerPoint, so you'll have those resources as well as the names of these organizations for everybody. So Krishna, thank you. This has been great. It's been really informative, and I'm so happy that you've been able to join us today.
Yes, it is my pleasure. I really appreciate you all for just taking the time to listen to some of the work that I've been doing and what I'm so passionate about. So thank you for creating the space, Mary Beth.
Absolutely. I'd like to remind everybody that you'll receive a follow-up survey, which we ask you to complete. We value this information so that we can provide everyone with the most effective information to support the wonderful work that you do in supporting our children. Just as a quick reminder, we have a lot of things going on virtually. Actually, this has allowed us to be able to reach more people. So if you're looking at becoming a special education surrogate parent, please follow us on our website, fcsn.org/RTSC. And you can find out information about becoming a special education surrogate parent. We are always in need, and sign up for one of our orientation. As well as if you are presently a SESP or special education surrogate parent, remember we are offering weekly Zoom gatherings so that you can get together, network, ask questions, get to know other SESPs who are also doing the great work that you're doing. And keep in mind that we'll be sending out some more information on the next coming webinar, as well as other trainings that are available for SESPs. So again, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.